Hello everyone, welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100. My name is Scott, also known as Cineram here on YouTube. I do the Thursday reviews on this collab channel, although I'm kind of occupying it all on my own for now. Once football season ends, I think we'll see EG back here. But I've been reviewing lots of new movies, theatrical movies, and I saw 3 of them in the past couple of weeks. But unfortunately, I really can't recommend any of them. I saw the new Ghostbusters. It was something that I was eager to see, was excited about, but it really didn't turn out to be all that great. Not really that funny, and all in all, I didn't think that much of it, unfortunately. There were things I liked about, but overall, wasn't crazy about it. Also saw Steven Spielberg's new film, the adaptation of a Roald Dahl book called The BFG, this was a movie that I didn't like very much at all, mostly because it seemed like hardly anything happened in it. There were long sequences where they were basically just hanging out and talking without the story moving forward. There's one scene in particular where they have breakfast. This scene seems to go on for a really long time. So yeah, I wasn't crazy about that one, unfortunately. There is one sequence where there's a whole bunch of giants that are hunting for the little girl that the main character giant has befriended. That's captured all in one big long shot for the most part. You know, and I went, hey, you know, they're not cutting. That's pretty exciting. But all in all, I really didn't connect very much with this movie at all. I also saw the comedy Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates, and of the 3, this is the one that I would recommend, except that I really can't recommend it either because I was hoping for it to be funnier than it was. And like a lot of comedies, it seems like the characters act extra crazy and kooky and weird in ways that just don't seem realistic, you know, and they just sort of like, you know, mug a lot, and I'm going, okay, enough of that, let's move on, please. I was excited to see that movie mostly because of Aubrey Plaza and Anna Kendrick as like the chicks gone wild, you know, and sort of giving Zac Efron and Adam Devine a run for their money in the crazy party animal department. And there was stuff, again, that I liked about it, but all in all, I didn't think it was that funny. And some of it just, you know, was hard to buy into, so can't really recommend those movies. There is one movie that I was eager to see, but not in the theater. It was Heaven's Gate. Michael Cimino is a director who passed away very recently. He is responsible for The Deer Hunter, which won Best Picture, and was, you know, a very, very acclaimed film. And then the next film he made was Heaven's Gate, which went completely the other way. It's a notorious box office bomb. Made only about $3 million in the theater when its budget was $44 million, and this was like in the late 70s, you know. That was an enormous amount of money for one movie, you know. Nowadays, it's just like, you know, that's nothing as far as movies go. Your typical romantic comedy costs at least $40 million, if not more. But back then, it was a huge loss for the studio that eventually got bought by another studio just to survive, and it was, you know, became the standard for box office flops, the biggest flop since like Cleopatra. In fact, Kevin Costner in the 90s made 3 movies. They were all nicknamed Kevin's Gate before they came out because of their ambition. Dances with Wolves, Waterworld, and The Postman. And of the 3, only The Postman was the real bomb in that one. Yeah, Heaven's Gate it was sort of like synonymous with you know, huge out-of-control production that didn't make any money at all, and the critics really like savaged it when it came out. I had never seen the movie before. Never really wanted to, never seen it. I read that there was a re-edit and a director's cut of the movie that was released in about 2012 and 2013. It's part of the Criterion Collection. And I thought, well, if I'm going to see this movie, that's the version to see, obviously. This version is longer than the theatrical version. It's 3.5 hours long. A little over 3.5 hours long. The movie is mostly set in 1790 in Wyoming. It involves something called the Johnson County War, which was something that actually happened, although how many of these characters are real and how many of them are fictional I'm not really that clear on. I'm just judging it basically on its merits as a film, as narrative storytelling, rather than whether or not it's completely historically accurate. The main character is Kris Kristofferson. In the opening sequence, he and John Hurt are graduating from Harvard University, and that was kind of an unbelievable sequence because they both look like they're well into their 40s at that point. And then the movie jumps ahead 20 years to the point where Kris Kristofferson is, I think he's the sheriff or the marshal or whatever of Johnson County. He's a lawman, and he is dealing with a lot of anti-immigrant violence in his area. There's a coalition of businessmen who own cattle, basically. They're cattle merchants. They're all very wealthy businessmen, and they are not happy about the fact that a lot of their livestock's being stolen, and so they get authorization from the U.S. government and the President of the United States to basically straight up kill over 100 people living in that area who are suspected of not only being thieves, but also just general undesirables. Except that almost all the people on those lists are either Slavic or Russian immigrants. You know, it's definitely an anti-immigrant movement that these guys are. And they're just going to run into the county and just assassinate these people, just assassinate, which is the majority of the population of this area. Well, Kris Kristofferson, he learns about that, and he's having none of it, and he is, you know, former friends of some of the guys. You know, some of them, I guess, were Harvard students. One in particular, John Hurt, is part of the organization. But the thing about John Hurt's character is he doesn't really end up doing all that much. He's significant only in the sense that he is friends with Kris Kristofferson, old college friends, and he has like a conversation with him. And then his character pretty much becomes useless after that, or just, you know, just sort of hanging around what's happening. Anyway, the coalition is led by Sam Waterston, who, of course, is well known for being on the television series Law and Order. And he is basically leading the effort to cleanse the area, Johnson County, of all these immigrants and supposed thieves and other undesirables. And so it's up to Kris Kristofferson and a former member of the coalition, played by Christopher Walken, to try and stop them. They both have a relationship with a madam who runs a whorehouse. She is played by Isabelle Huppert, who I primarily know from I Love Huckabees, the David Russell movie. She was in that film. I know she's been in a lot of other stuff. She's a French actress, but that's primarily what I know her from. Anyway, Kris Kristofferson and Christopher Walken both have relationships with her. She sort of bounces back and forth between the two. Not really sure who she wants to spend her life with, but she's a business lady, you know. She's running a business, and she's making good money. And, of course, some of her customers don't pay her in cash. They pay her in cattle, which the coalition insists is stolen. And so, you know, everyone's just like, okay, let's just go in there and wipe them all out. So they've got to figure out how to defend themselves from all these marauders that are coming in. This government-sanctioned group of marauders that are going to come in and just wipe everybody out. There's a great Christopher Walken moment where he meets with Sam Waterston, and Sam Waterston's like, hey, you know, we have the approval of the president. And Christopher Walken has the perfect Walken-esque response to that. It's just like one of the all-time great Walken moments there. So then there's a big battle. Then we have the army, the appointed army of ethnic cleansers comes in to wipe out everyone, and we have Kris Kristofferson and Christopher Walken organizing the effort to fight back against them. But in the meantime, there's long stretches where they're just sort of getting to know, where you're just sort of seeing the area that they live in and getting to know these characters and their little sort of personal relationships with each other. There's a long sequence set at a public sort of recreational place, which is called Heaven's Gate. That's where the name of the movie comes from, where there's dancing and music playing and roller skating and there's lots of eating and drinking and just, you know, generally just enjoying life until, and just in between preparations for, you know, this onslaught that's going to meet them. Like I said, John Hurt really doesn't have much of a part in this movie. He has his big scene like in the beginning at the college where he is the class orator. He's sort of the valedictorian, I guess you could say, of the class that's graduating from Harvard. And there's a whole sequence which reminded me a lot of The Wedding and the Deer Hunter, only it doesn't go on nearly as long, where everyone's just sort of dancing around having a great time, and then boom, jumps forward 20 years later. And at that point, John Hurt's character just sort of hangs out and doesn't do a whole lot. So did I like this movie? In parts. There's a lot that just seems to just go on for no reason, and there are characters that seem sort of extraneous, and perhaps it's because they're real people that maybe didn't directly affect what was happening in the story, but they were there, and so that's why the characters are there. I'm not really sure. Maybe I should have read up on it a little bit more. But as a film, it seems like could be shorter. The version that I saw, was probably the most complete version, the version that the director was most satisfied with. But yeah, there's a lot of just very, very sort of languorous scenes. It reminded me a lot of the BFG in that sense, and that is, there's lots of scenes in which they're just sort of hanging out and talking about nothing in particular. And we sort of get to know the characters, but it doesn't really move the story forward. So yeah, it's a long experience. I'm glad I saw it. I'm not, I didn't think that I wasted my time watching this movie. It's good just to see a movie like this, that has had such an impact on movie industry. After this movie was the failure that it was, the Studio United Artists, they pretty much folded, and since it was like the start of the 80s, studios in general started to move away from these very expensive director projects and more into, looking at, the youth audience and looking at Star Wars and looking at, how to just make money. It's important, that we make money, so we need to focus on that. It's more on these character-driven director projects. There was a couple of flops that came out around this time, one of them being the Francis Ford Coppola film, One from the Heart. A couple others. Another movie that was cited as being like, a huge, long production was the Warren Beatty film Reds, another film that I haven't seen. But yeah, that one was actually a success, whereas these others weren't such a great success. And so a lot of the studios ended up moving away from those types of films, the films that were, most prominent in the 70s. And we get the 80s, and we get, we get, lowbrow comedies, National Lampoon. We get Stallone and Schwarzenegger, being action heroes and everything like that. And there's real sort of a, not that those character dramas didn't exist anymore, but yeah, there was a much greater emphasis on populist product rather than character-driven stories from that point on. And Heaven's Gate, unfortunately, is largely blamed for that. So yeah, not a bad movie. Certainly not a bad movie. Very interesting. But yeah, there's a lot that just sort of seemed to it's hard to put into words exactly. But yeah, it's a movie that asks you to sort of live in that world for a long period of time. It's sort of, I'm not finding the right words. But anyway, not a bad movie, an okay movie, but certainly not one of my favorites. And it doesn't surprise me that it was the failure that it was, especially since reading about how everything that Michael Cimino did on this movie just seemed to draw out the process even longer. Of course, these are all things I've only just read about. Wasn't there, couldn't tell you exactly what happened in the production of the film, but yeah. Just trying to judge the movie on its own merits. It's okay. It's an okay film, and it's certainly good looking, that's for sure. Great photography, and all in all, the performances are really good as well. So yeah, that's my half-assed review of Heaven's Gate. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week I'm going to try and do a review of the new Star Trek movie, and there's a couple other movies that I'm pretty excited about coming out in the next few weeks, like the new Jason Bourne movie and Suicide Squad. I'm very excited to see those movies, so I might have reviews for you in the coming weeks. Thanks very much for watching. If you want us to focus on a particular actor, actress, director, theme, genre, series, what have you, visit our Facebook page. Leave us a comment, or leave us a comment on this video right here. We'd like to hear from you. Thanks very much for watching. Talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye.